All right, Dean Davis, the show. We're going to do some sports take, particularly about the Chicago Bulls with the hiring of executive basketball personnel Arturas Karnisovas. We have to get ready for this moving forward.
Arturas.
I said Arturas.
I know. I'm saying it for myself, so I know what to say.
Could you not do it when I'm doing the opening? Golly!
Go for it. What you got?
All right. So we're lucky enough to be joined by our former executive producer. You see our newest executive producer. He's not new anymore. He's been around for a while. He's doing a fantastic job. The guy that gave the job off to him, who's doing a great job with NBC Sports Chicago as the head of podcast production, the one and only Tony Gill. How are you doing, T?
What's up, fellas?
What's going on?
You know how it is.
Well, you've been in the crib. I really ain't heard for you to be in the crib as much as you used to just stay in my back pocket.
He working.
Yeah, right. They don't even do show. I used to Sports Talk Live all last week with the little windows. They were just like, it ain't no sports right now. Just chill out and relax. So real quick, before we jump into that, Tony, for all our followers who've always known you to be around, what's been going on recently? We know what happened at first at NBC Sports Chicago. How are they now trying to take care of not having live sports to necessarily talk about, and how are you guys moving content-wise, and how has it affected your job as being the guy that runs the podcast here?
Actually, work just kind of like picked up for everybody. Nobody has been laid off at NBC Sports, which has been good. Everybody's been able to keep their jobs as of this time of this recording. But it's been great, man. I mean, everybody has kind of put their creative minds kind of like in hyper mode because without for lack of a better word, without the crutch of sports in game-to-game analysis, you really have to dig deep and try and entertain people on a mental level, on a entertainment level, where what they read and how we're engaging with them on social media, because we don't have a whole lot of sports on television. So, I mean, every morning we have a conference call, just shooting ideas. Well, what can we do? Well, this is coming up. Maybe we should do that. Like everybody is kind of all pitched in and really work together to kind of keep the content game going. And for my role has certainly picked up, because now with less things on television, people still want to hear from their various favorite hosts and insiders about what's going on in their sports. So Zoom podcasting, what we're using now, is certainly been the tool for me right now. I've been telling them about it since I got hired, and now with all that's been going on, they've been forced to kind of dive right into using it. So, but it's been going well. Everybody's been embracing the new changes, and we're just kind of moving forward.
Real quick before my last question, before D takes in, how many I Told You So's did you have to have over the Zoom podcasting part? Like, when did you finally stop mentioning, like, I did tell y'all about this?
No, because it happened so fast. It was, we're working. Hey, nobody come in for at least 2 weeks until we say so. And then now it's like, well, content still needs to go out. Like, the podcasts are on a schedule. They still need to be able to, produce. So it wasn't just, I didn't really have time to, run off any I Told You shows. So it was just right into, hey, this is what you do. I'll send you the link when we're recording. Same as always. We're still going to have fun. We're still going to talk about the interesting topics of the various teams, and we're just going to kind of keep it going.
All right. I want to definitely get to the process, but more importantly, out of all the candidates that took place in this or refused to take place in it, who was your favorite, and what did you think about the process to get to Arturas Karnisovas, the former general manager of the Denver Nuggets?
See, that's the thing with executive hires. It's like you don't know 100% where their hands are in each various organizations. So I couldn't tell you on the detail of this person did this, and this until like after the fact, where you see these candidates come up, and then you go back and look, okay, what has this person has done specifically? Have they been a part of any podcast, or has somebody written a piece about them about what their daily jobs were? And that's all this was for media members and for fans involved, that once the name started to pop up on who the Bulls were interviewing, you went back and read up on all of those people to see which one you thought was the best candidate. So when I did that, Arturas was certainly one of them. With how, for me, when people were bringing up, well, the Bulls are looking to revamp their front office, I looked at organizations. Which organizations are the healthiest, are the most well-functioning, are the most updated. And Denver was certainly at one of the teams at the top of my list. Denver, Miami, the Clippers,
Utah.
Utah, those organizations that seemingly are in a small market, still operating at a high level. And Denver, specifically speaking to Arturas, was operating at that level. I mean, going into overseas and actually doing scouting over there, taking Jokic in the second round, and now he's an all-NBA player. Like, a lot of this stuff, I mean, some of this stuff is luck, but a lot of it is research. A lot of it is investing in organizational growth and player development. And Denver was doing that. They were leading, one of the leaders in the league in doing that. For an organization that can't get top free agents, they had to find other ways to become really good. And that's what the Bulls need at this moment. Right now, the Bulls can't draw any free agents to save them from themselves. So they need to dive into the nuances of building a team like the smaller markets teams have to do it. The Bulls have to do it as well. And Arturas is certainly a great candidate to do that.
So, Tony, who do you think Arturas are going to look at when it comes far as, or some of the guys maybe you wouldn't mind seeing to get the gigs as far as like a GM or a head coach?
Actually, Casey Johnson just tweeted out.
I thought Mark Eversley got that job.
Here, let me see. I didn't see it. I'm going through Twitter right now. But go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
No. What I was going to mention, Casey just tweeted out. Coaching hasn't been brought up just yet in terms of a change of coaching. They're still kind of working through that. They're still trying to fill out the front office right now. They made the hire of J.J. Polk for assistant GM. They still technically don't have a GM just yet, but getting Polk away from David Griffin in New Orleans was huge. He's an analytics and he's a cap guy. You always need a cap guy. Pat Riley has his. All the big time. You can't do everything. You can't know everything. So along with being president or vice president of basketball operations, you're basically being hired to hire people that know more than you on certain aspects of building a team. And that's what they're trusting in him, that he can fill out the rest of this front office, update it, get people in here who understand modern basketball, how teams are building their rosters, how they're being flexible with their cap and being really smart with how they use their caps with different wording and contracts. So that's what he's in the process of doing right now.
Tony, real quick. The Bulls have a cap guy that's supposed to be pretty good. Does this mean that he's gone then?
I don't know. And what the Bulls are doing is they made that hire of Arturas, and now they're going hands off on this, which is something that they do.
This is what you've heard has been important to you, that they're really going to stay. Whoa, I'm sorry, D. When you're saying hands off, how important is it we talking about John Paxson with his hands off then? I guess that when you're saying, because that's the most important hands off person in the situation.
Well, going back to Tony's podcast, when I listened to was Casey Johnson, you, Jason Goff, I believe, I forgot the other gentleman on there. Rob Schaefer. Yeah. Casey was basically saying like, John Paxson's like, hey, I'll leave up out of here if you want me to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is weird because usually a prior regime doesn't get to stay, but they love those guys, so much. But from what I heard and what I read and what I was told is Arturas has the final say-so on everything basketball. Everything basketball, all basketball decisions is all him. He has to okay it before anything happens. And then obviously he'll run it past Michael and Gary for like big moves, obviously.
Right.
But basketball operations, the autonomy that John Paxson had, Arturas is going to have that same. He answers to no one except for Michael Reinsdorf and Jerry Reinsdorf. Those are only two people that he has to respond to in terms of decision makings on the basketball sides of things. John Paxson is his future in terms of his participation in basketball decisions is up in the air and is based on what Arturas wants from him. But the way he's filling out his team right now, I don't think there's going to be room for John Paxson to be on any type of board or any type of decision making. He may ask him a couple questions, or so, or something like that. But I don't think John is going to have influence over what Karnisovas is doing.
But it seems to be pretty standard for the Bulls, because usually we put somebody in charge, they kind of let them go ahead and do whatever they're going to do, right?
He's had two basically GMs the entire time
he's been there,
has had on the team. So he's certainly basketball isn't his forte. Jerry will admit that. He said that if you read up on many occasions. Basketball is not Jerry's thing. Michael, basketball is not his thing. They understand the business side of things, but in terms of actually trying to build a championship team, they don't know what goes on. So why would they input their any knowledge on that base? That's just not what they do. So they entrust the people that they hire, and they empower those people to do their jobs and trust that their decisions is going to lead them to a winning organization.
Smart leadership.
Dan Davis Show. We apologize for our producers ruffling in the background, Tony. He should know better by now. Look, real quick, I want to ask you this. I was reading an article in Athletic. I don't know if it was Greenberg or our buddy down there on Mayberry, but they were talking about that Karnisovas, it could be a hindrance, but it could also be a positive to have Paxson around, especially when it comes to the purse strings of the Reinsdorfs, to have someone to go in. Probably someone like Kenny has to – they didn't say this all the way, but like what Kenny has done, it seems like Kenny's implied for Rick Hahn with some of these contracts. I don't think, like, he gave the final say-so, I think, with the Jose Abreu, which at the time was the highest contract for a White Sox player. But do you think that there is something to be said that you probably should have a John Paxson in your corner? Because at times when you want to go out and sign that big free agent, and the Bulls necessarily have not been the team to go about wanting to necessarily spend that money, that it'd be better to have Paxson in your back pocket, or you're just better moving forward because he is just, as soon as he could be a fan of yours or be someone that can help you, he could also be someone that could tell them perhaps that's not a good idea that you're talking about.
I don't know. I mean, let me preface this. I'm speaking from a position of, in terms of my basketball consciousness as a Bulls watcher, there's only been John Paxson and Gar Forman.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know.
You don't know the great days of Jerry Krause.
Right.
Like, I don't know anything past that. So
the great Dickie Simpkins draft, my brother. You don't know anything about that.
So, I would assume that John is still going to be either paid or around
the same amount of money. I know you don't know this, but just would you think for someone that's taking a step down from executive vice president, and as we've known to be, sometimes they'll spend the money, sometimes they don't. And I've just wondered this out loud. Do you think 2 years from now, John Paxson is making half, if not 80% of what he's making as the executive vice president, as just being in some type of advisory role?
That's if he's even still there, though, right? Because
true.
he can't get the book.
You're right, but let's just say if he's still and again, this is for all of us, real quick. Where do you go? Because usually, man, it's something to take less. You know what I'm saying? Like, you could move me to another position, and it may not be a position of power, but if I'm still getting that same paycheck, yeah, it's not what I prefer, but let that money still flow. So that's like the thing that stood out when thinking about this is like, man, what do you pay someone that you were paying here, but they were doing the work level up here, even though if we didn't like the results. But now, as far as their importance, they're really down to here. Do you, as a team that looks at money and is very fiscal, do you still pay that person because you like them, or do you come to some considerations like, you know what the hell you're doing, you bring your ass back down here?
I mean, it's really up to Michael and Jerry. I mean, we know the love that they have for John and Gar. If it's their money, if they want to pay them to do nothing, if they just want to give them money, that's what they're going to do. No matter what kind of actual role that they have with the team. If they just want them around and just likes them and likes paying the money, what can we do? As long as they aren't dabbling into or messing with the decision makers on the basketball side, I don't think fans should really care. Like, I know, for instance, for the Bulls Outsiders podcast, you can check that out too. Those guys, Big Dave, Matt Peck, John Sabine, they do a really great job. Matt was really upset that they just weren't completely cut off. And I thought personally that might have been unreasonable of an ask, considering those two connections.
I did too.
With Jerry and Michael.
But common sense is they should, but I'm with you.
They should, but
here.
Right. For what we know of their relationship, it's a lot to ask for to just, hey, kick them out of the building, don't pay them anymore, don't do anything like that, considering what we know that relationship to be.
Yeah, Tony, one question that I've been kind of wrecking my head over, or just been thinking about, is the makeup of the roster of the team. Now, you do have Zach LaVine. You have a few other guys to kind of sign up until at least next season, season after next, I'm sorry. But contracts are going to be, the team contract structure is going to be, there's no kind of like heavy weighted contract they have to deal with a long term. So what do you think they're going to go into looking as far as the roster of this team? Should we expect to see a pretty big turnover? Maybe one or two guys here, maybe young guys, maybe like a Kobe or a Wendell. What do you think?
I think from what I was told and what I've been gleaming from people that know, can we call him AK? I like calling him AK.
Yeah, go for it. He's going to take his time and check out the merchandise before he make any rash decisions, what you about to say.
Yeah, I mean, he's very calculated, very organized, very, very stoic in his decision-making, very just really, really calculated before making any, major moves. So I would assume that first of all, we all know how this goes. You don't give away the player unless the coach is an all-time great. Usually the coach goes first. That's just how it goes. And every, GM or president of basketball operations, they want their own coach. They don't want to be married to anybody that was there before they got there. So I think you look at that first, but in terms of the roster, you just got to find out a couple things. Zach is still on a really, really, really great deal.
Yeah.
Lauri Markkanen is still on his rookie deal. Kobe White still on the rookie deal. All the important people that you want to project and see what they look like are all under manageable contracts. So I don't expect any major moves right from the jump unless something just falls in their lap. Like, I'm not a reporter, so don't take this with a grain of salt with the whole Donovan Mitchell thing. The Nuggets, if you remember the Nuggets.
Boy, you feeding for that, boy.
The Nuggets did trade Donovan Mitchell for Trey Lyles in the draft. So, I mean, if he's upset and wants an out, I mean, unless that happens, but typically that's not how this thing, works out.
Right.
But I'm sure they just want to see, is Lauri Markkanen really that bad after showing what he did? Can Zach LaVine stay healthy and be that guy for a second season? Can Wendell Carter stay healthy? Can Kobe White be a star? There's still a lot of questions that people in the organization, not even including the people that hasn't been watching the Bulls on a day-to-day basis, have to find out. But people still in the organization don't know what this team can be and what this young core is in total. So I think that'll be the first thing that they look at. All those other pieces, Otto Porter, Thad Young, Thomas Edwards, like all those expenditures,
ancillary pieces.
Right, ancillary pieces, whatever. But they are really, in order to start going in a positive direction after coaching or whatever out of that, is what do those four look like together on a basketball court for an extended period of time when they are put in the best positions to succeed?
And I think wait for that question.
Yeah, that's the biggest question that I don't think we have an answer yet to.
We've been waiting for that answer for 2-3 seasons now, right, Ken?
Yeah, truly. Dan Davis Show, Tony Gill, me, D, our executive producer, Ryan Bukoveski. Tony, real quick. So listen, they're going to now go from the smallest front office and scouting department, and that even goes with analytics in the NBA, or one of the smallest, and they're going to start to put money in there. But being a Bulls fan, that would tell me that money's coming from someplace else. Should I believe that, or should I think that when they're stepping into the modern NBA, they know that they should have been spending this money already, and they're still going to have the money when it comes to free agents and coaches that they should have? Or should I think that, if they're going to be expanding this, then there's going to be less money for when it comes to pursuits of free agency or pursuits of big-name head coaches, even though we know they probably won't go with a big-name head coach with Artemis AK's first job. Even though, and unfortunately, AJ Griffin is being mentioned. I'll get into why I said unfortunately a minute ago.
His name's coming up a lot,
Yeah. I think we are in a we won't believe you, you need more people situation with the Bulls, where they're going to have to keep shelling this money out. Otherwise, we're going to believe that, you're faking the funk right now. You spent money and you went and got a quality candidate in Arturas. You're allowing him to go after really competent people. You're spending money on that. We'll see what the scouting and analytics department looks like afterwards. But I would find it hard to believe that Karnisovas would take this job without assurances that he can build this in the way that he sees fit. I mean, even if he wants to build it exactly like how Denver is, it's still light years away from what the Bulls currently have.
Yeah.
So just from the way from what I've read and what I've been told about his personality, he doesn't seem like a guy that'll mess around with that or take a job just because it's this title. If the Bulls didn't have any pieces or assets, and if he wasn't assured that he was able to build this and invest in the front office like they should have before, I don't think he takes this job. So that was kind of like the clue for me that, okay, maybe Michael and Jerry are actually ready to invest. I mean, they just seen the returns on their other business, the White Sox. When you actually invest in yourself and invest in your front office and give them opportunities in the finances to actually be successful. Now look at all this momentum on the White Sox. Now, and this is just the White Sox. This is a literal small market team in terms of the White Sox. But imagine if you did the same for your basketball team, for a
global brand,
right? A global brand like the Bulls. And I'm hoping that they have seen the light, that they have changed their ways in terms of how they move with the basketball side of things. And it's certainly turning out that it's looking that way.
As long as they have the hands off it, I agree with you, Tony. It's probably going to go that way.
Look, we've come out and we've heard that the issues that the process had. There were no minority candidates, and even if there were, they looked at them being called on as being token interviews. I want to ask all of you this question.
Yeah,
it seems that the report that we've been getting that it's clearly going to be a person of color as the general manager. Is that a positive because people looked at how the systems that you put in place as far as pulling up your executive VP and they didn't like it? Is it a positive that you're saying, okay, well, at least we're going to make sure that we give the general manager to a person of color because some people don't like the way they went about this? Because it seems, now I could be wrong, but it seems reactionary more than I'm coming into this thinking I got to give it to a person of color, especially perhaps if a white person may be better at that job right now than a person of color. I'm just banding that about to see what you guys' thoughts are on that.
Well, my thing is, I think because of the landscape of the NBA, and you want to have a general manager that's somewhat relatable, right? The NBA was one sport where you have to have those. All sports you got to have relationships.
What about executive VP? Yeah,
I'm not knocking that. I'm not knocking that at all. I think they definitely should have talked to more people. Although I did hear I read a report saying a lot of teams didn't let them talk to some of their guys who could have been black for that position. So
they could have been black, or they were black.
They were black.
Okay, just making sure about the blackness.
They were. Yes, they was dark.
He may have been black.
I don't know. So no, but I think with the NBA, relationships that we've seen over the years are huge, and that could be, to Tony's point that he made earlier, a downfall as to why the Bulls can't be able to attract free agents, a big time free agent. They always constantly have to go within the draft. So if you really want to turn things over, and from the analytics standpoint that Tony talked about, just everything just kind of letting AK do his thing, probably hiring someone, a black general manager, would probably be the best benefit for them, because they do want to kind of show a new era for the Chicago Bulls. Progression too. Yes. I mean, we talked about the NBA. The NBA is, for the most part, more than other leagues, a progressive league. But I think
6 to 8 black executives. Well, executives of color. 6 of them are African American.
Right? Exactly.
Or black.
So
throws it all off.
But you want to have that. You definitely want to have that out there as far as that's building those relationships with players and kind of turn it around. Listen, you heard about Rich Paul. Not saying the Bulls going to hire him, but you've been hearing teams about, hey, maybe we should hire him because he had a relationship with these guys. But just guys from possibly on the NBA on TV who have a good inside track to some of these stars. So and predominantly the guys are African American. So I think it's probably going to happen. Will it shock me if it doesn't? No. You definitely want to go with the best candidate, despite the gender or sex, whatever it may be. But I think in this case, Tony, probably they probably want to show a new era with the Chicago Bulls. Likely it might be someone black to get the general manager and possibly the coaching position too.
I think this is always going to be a constant issue in major sports, in major sports leagues. So I'm glad Mark Spears and Undefeated that they wrote that article. Yeah. And I got to admit, and I admitted on the last Bulls Talk podcast, and Jason admitted himself, like once they made that hire, like I didn't think about it. I didn't think about, well, they didn't interview a minority. I got to say it. Maybe I have to turn in my
card. Both of you should right away.
But the excitement of, okay, a fresh face, an outside voice is coming in. I didn't even think about it until I saw the article. Like, oh man, wait, they didn't, from what was reported, they didn't interview a minority candidate, and they probably should have.
In the NBA?
Yeah.
Let me cut that out. When they said that they were looking at Danny Ferry, I got pissed. And that's when I was like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And I focused it on Lou Aldane, but I was really thinking about it from not any black perspective. But please continue.
But yeah, I mean, that was perfectly right. That was what Mark Spears written was facts. And it should be taken seriously that whenever an executive spot is open in any of the, especially the ones predominant with a large majority
in the chocolate city athletes, in the chocolate city too.
Yeah, that black and minority and women too, because I don't want to exclude if there are women candidates that are ready available to take those roles, they should be interviewed as well.
Absolutely.
But again, we need to. Articles like that need to happen. We need to make sure these organizations know that, hey, you need to widen your net. Like, I know Danny Ferry and Brian Colangelo was you casting a wide net, but is it really?
No, it's not.
Really?
It's not. It's the most privileged in basketball, basically. Right. The strongest man in basketball, damn near outside of the commissioner's son, and Danny Ferry's been beloved since Duke. So get out of here real quick. Brian,
quick.
Wait. Ryan, what did you have to say about it?
Oh.
I mean, to me, it's basically like what you guys are talking about. You should expect whenever you're doing any type of coach or executive search, I'm sure all these teams want to move fast, but you shouldn't allow that to happen. You should make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to interview all types of candidates that are qualified for the job. And because, first of all, it's cheating yourself. Arturas might be the best candidate, but you don't know that if you don't talk to everybody. And wouldn't you want to hear every single idea possible? Because that's something that can help whoever that person is that you hire, whatever race or gender. You might get some insight from somebody else that really helps you down the road. So, to me, I would always tell, if I was an owner of a team, if you're going to do an executive search or a coach search, give yourself a lot of time, interview yourself a lot of candidates, even though you might have your favorites. That's not the point. You got to make sure that you do your due diligence.
Also, too, the Bulls have been looking to make this hire going back to All-Star break, right? That's when a lot of reports coming out saying like, they're talking to everybody amongst the league because All-Star game was here. Now, Tony's colleague, Casey Johnson over at NBC Sports Chicago, he did release an article yesterday, I believe, the 10th, saying Michael Reinsdorf, Kenny Williams defend the Bulls amid diversity concerns. So they have been made aware of it. Now, what are they going to do in the future? We shall see.
Only problem with that, and definitely Kenny Williams being executive vice president of the White Sox and general manager before speaks volumes. And I'm not saying that this is true, but there's something to be a token, and I'm not saying that that's true, or also be the one that's viewed as being a good one. Like, the problem with black people is we don't get enough chances to mess up because there's always a lane that we're looked at, and one mess up can be the end of it. And that mess up can happen way before you take the steps before you can get into that position. So I'm happy, and I've always been proud of Kenny Williams for having that position. And I'm not dissing him from having it. He's right to come out. I can remember stories about Jerry Reinsdorf going into his family's house and basically saying, I'm going to take care of this young man. But he had an affinity for that one young man compared to having an affinity for a collection of people. And that's the thing I think that we're trying to impress on you. Yeah, you may lack a one or two of them. And I'm not saying that's what's happening, but there's always the visuals to be mindful of. And in a city like Chicago, you should be real mindful of something like that. And even if, and again, no one wants to be have a token interview, you need to make it more sincere than that. But you should be very mindful of the visuals when it comes up in that. And it shouldn't have happened. There should have been legit Black candidates that have come there. But if you like AK, you could have went with AK. But this kind of speaks volumes to kind of the mindset that organization is. And it's going back to what Ryan says. If you're going to do it, that's my last part real quick. That's like when half of the population, it's not as Black people, but women can vote. And even still looking at elective offices, half of our population, we deem that some of them aren't acceptable. So do you know how many better senators, mayors, governors, and I'm not even talking about people of color, if people were cool with women getting these presidents, women getting these jobs, because that's half of the population, you do yourself a disservice if you don't think like that.
Yeah. And also, too, they had the time. So you can't say like, oh, this is a rushed process. They had the time to do this. They had the time to actually filter out and talk to a lot of different people to kind of set themselves up. But like I said, I think, but at one point I do agree with Tony. I think it's a simple fact of a lot of Bulls fans like, man, listen, we just want to get the Gar-Pax era over. I don't care who it is. We want something different.
Somebody from outside.
From an outside.
Not a friend.
Yeah, exactly.
No connection. That kind of goes back.
You don't want to have that at all. And I can understand what Tony was saying. A lot of Bulls fans just happy like, man, brighter days are possibly in our future. Last
question for me. That kind of goes back to the Adrian Griffin thing. Listen, I'm going to tell you why I'm reason that. And it's not an Adrian Griffin diss. This man pulled himself up in his bootstraps. For 2 years, he was at Seton Hall with AK. He's been assistant coach around the league. It's a couple times where Adrian Griffin kind of irritated me as a Bulls fan. One of them wasn't his fault. One was when the Bulls had J.R. Smith and Paxton Dean. He wasn't the type of player they wanted, and they never even let him suit up. They traded him out. Maybe Adrian Griffin, because he had left here. I don't know if he was in Denver. Yeah, he was in Denver because this is how he ended up in Denver, J.R. Smith in Denver. They traded J.R. Smith for Adrian Griffin and brought him back here. And it was like for a Bulls team that was like, you're a bottom team, even though we know J.R. has maybe scatterbrained a little bit, but the skill set is the skill set. It was like, why aren't you throwing the most talent in here? Why are you always looking at something from that narrow perspective of just who the guy is? Maybe you can help change him to adjust to the culture. And then the second one was when Joakim Noah got suspended, and Ben Wallace and Adrian Griffin basically went to, I think it was Vinny that may have been the head coach, and was like, or it was the other Boylan, and was like, that suspension isn't long enough. And I was like, who the hell is Adrian Griffin? Again, I wasn't there, but I was a Joakim Noah guy, and I knew Joe would get his ish together, and I'm probably these guys are the reason that he got his ish together, because I thought it was going to take a little bit longer. But that's just some me in my narrow view as a Bulls fan who's been mistreated. And when I hear that, but Tony, should I look at if Adrian Griffin does get this job, is the Bulls still going back to someone they have a connection to, or in league circles, he's a guy that is viewed as the next man up?
No, I think people around league circles have said that Adrian Griffin deserves a head coaching job. And I know Bulls fans, at least at this point, because things have been kind of coming together with outside voices, which has been great. I don't think that criticism should be put on if they do pursue Adrian Griffin as the head coach. He was one of the coaches in the All-Star game with Toronto head coach Nick Nurse. He coached in the Rising Stars game. And I was surprised. I was like, wow. Like when he came to the podium and he spoke very well. And just in terms of
that color boy can talk, T.
We talking about basketball?
Yeah. Just
he speaks so eloquently to be one of them.
His enthusiasm. You can really tell that, wow, he's really grown just as a coach. From what I hear and what I've been told from people around the league, like certain coaches that would like this Bulls job are saying, but Adrian might be the dude for this team and for this job right now. So I was taken aback by that. I was surprised by that. Coaches around the league that want this job are saying Adrian Griffin
should have the job.
Ready to be a head coach.
Wow. He was a bench guy. When it comes to the question of do you have to be a star to be a leader, he was one of those guys that clearly was the outlier. that he was a guy that people viewed him as a vet and a leader, and he wasn't a ball. I mean, he could play basketball, but you didn't look at him as like, man, we need Adrian Griffin here. But they loved and followed him real hard back in those days. That Ben Wallace era Bulls team.
Yeah. All right, Tony, man, thank you so much for hopping on with us, man, breaking down this Bull stuff. Make sure everybody y'all follow Tony on Twitter at @Tony Gill and all this work he's doing down there at NBC Sports Chicago.
Tony, thank you for being our first guest as a return of Dan Davis Show with guests again. Because now we kind of talked about it and we was going through it, and I mentioned, like, we came up, but it's good to have you be our first guest as we get back to interviewing again. I always appreciate everything you've done for us and everything you do for yourself moving forward. Keep shining, young star. And anybody out there, look at this young man as someone that you can look up to, somebody who grinds hard to go get what they want to do, and also is a pretty good dude from a pretty good family. And also, you're one of the first people that said, and it crossed my mind, but you were like, hey, we should put in Ryan, and Ryan has been nothing but great for us. And
absolutely.
We appreciate both of you for everything that you've done for us. Listen, don't do anything stupid before you hear from us again.
Keep your hands to yourself.